And we are good to go. Okay. So to reiterate, this is Ransom Place Traffic Calming Meeting 1. So start with what is traffic calming. This is the Neighborhood Street Traffic Calming Program is the long form. So NSTC is the abbreviation. Anytime you see that, that's what we're talking about. And it really focuses on residential streets. So streets that are like more arterial or have a lot of businesses on them generally are the targets of other NDOT programs. And this one in particular is just to, address streets where people live. We really focus on physical solutions that encourage lower speeds over significant lengths. So those are often like speed tables or speed cushions. That's, what we really like to use. We can also do signs and pavement markings, but the thing with those is they don't physically reduce speeding. They're more of, setting rules or communicating suggestions. And ultimately, the purpose of the program is to lean pretty heavily toward the goal of speed reduction. So if you have a lot of cars speeding through your neighborhood, there's, a good chance that you may be in need of some traffic calming. So the traffic calming program has 3 E's. That's education, enforcement, and engineering. Education, we're doing a little bit of that right now. We're here talking to you about the program, what it's for. Enforcement is not so much the domain of NDOT, but rather the police. And while it is a part of the traffic calming program, our police force is fairly constrained, and they don't have the ability to be on every neighborhood street looking for people speeding. So because of that, we try to focus on the engineering portion of traffic calming and just do whatever we can with the resources that NDOT does have control over. So to revisit the point about speed, it's very important because when we have, vehicles crashing into people, how fast they're going really matters for their chance of survival. So if you were going 45 on your, residential street and somebody were to get hit, God forbid, we can see on the right, their chances of making it are actually, shockingly low. The good news is that the chances of survival increase dramatically if we get closer to the 25-mile-an-hour range. And that's really, how fast people ought to be going on streets that are posted at 25 miles an hour anyway. So we're not really looking to make, traffic go significantly slower than it's supposed to be going. We really just want to add friction to the streets and just make sure that people aren't really physically able to drive at those, really dangerous speeds. This is a very highly in-demand program, very popular. So as of February 2023, there were 464 neighborhood streets that had applied for the program. So this screenshot is from the Nashville Traffic Calming Interactive Map. It's a really handy tool, actually, that is able to show you what streets have applied, what streets are active projects, and then which ones have been selected but are not yet approved. So in winter of 2023, that's, this current cycle, we selected 26 neighborhood streets to be a part of this round of traffic calming, and we, repeat every 6 months. So on average, we do about 50 of these projects every year. So how do we choose the streets? That's something that a lot of people want to know. This pie chart here pretty much breaks it down, but basically the biggest piece of the pie is vehicular speeds. We're really focused on getting traffic to a safe volume. So that's why that is weighted so heavily, or safe speeds rather. Next biggest piece of the pie is volume. So the odds that a pedestrian might get hit, God forbid, increase if there are more cars making trips on that street. So that's the rationale by which we've decided to have the volume be another significant portion of the criteria. And then, of course, if there's already been incidents, vulnerable user, that's pedestrian or cyclist. If we have record of, crashes on the street, then that's a pretty good indication that something needs to be fixed. So we weight that as well. And then these other two pieces, that last 15%, that's kind of a predictive measure. So if we have schools or parks, destinations which have a higher probability that people will be walking to them, we want to make sure to account for that because, hopefully we don't have to wait for somebody who's walking or biking to get hit in order to implement safety measures. To dig in a little bit, so the 85th percentile speed, that's a statistical measure of traffic speed that traffic engineers use. It's not the mean, it's not the average, but it means that 15% of people measured were going faster than, a particular number, in this case, 25 miles an hour. And that is that. So how did Ransom Place do overall? This section is from Murfreesboro Pike to the end of Ransom Place. That's the entire length. So we started the Pike and then just go all the way up until it dead ends. And the 85th percentile speed was 36 miles an hour, where it's posted at 25. So a pretty significant portion of people are speeding. And then you all had a pretty high volume for a neighborhood like this at almost 2,500 vehicles per day. This is the map. It's actually a screenshot from the NDOT interactive traffic calming map. So we can see Murfreesboro Pike here over to the east. The fact that we're highlighted green means that you've been selected. And then these purple streets over here are streets that have applied but have not yet been selected to receive traffic calming. So with that, I want to take a quick break and pause for any questions that anyone may have. Next, we're going to talk about some of the measures we can put in place on Ransom Drive, but just want to give the opportunity for anyone to speak up if they'd like to. Okay, sounds like we can keep going. So there are a pretty wide variety of things that NDOT can do to address speeding.
I'm sorry. Hello, can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Oh, yes,
yeah,
yes, I can.
I was muted and didn't know it. I do have a question. How do you decide where to put them? David and myself, vice president and president of this community, we did some scouting and we figured out where we'd like to have them. But how do you figure out? How do you tell where you are going to put those speed bumps?
Oh, well, that's a great question. So what we have is a concept design ready to go. That's pretty high level. We don't have exact positions or anything, but essentially there's an optimal spacing between cushions that we've found is not too many that it's obnoxious. We realize that y'all are driving over this every day, so we don't want to cause too much friction. But then spaced too far apart, what people have the opportunity to do is slow down for the speed cushion and then speed up and get right back to speeding again. That range is about 400 to 600 feet. But what we can do is, we can take a closer look once we pull up the design and take questions about it.
Okay.
And any other questions? All right. So speed cushions is the most popular traffic calming measure. Physically, they do a good job of reducing speeds, and they also provide gaps for wide wheelbase vehicles such as fire trucks and ambulances to navigate them without needing to slow down as much as a car might need to slow down. So these are modular rubber devices. They're about 3 inches high, 6 feet wide. The length can change. 7 feet is pretty standard, but then as we go up in desired speed, 10.5 and even 14 foot can be used. The 14 foot we usually reserve for streets where we have a posted speed limit of 30 or so, just because it is a more gentle speed cushion than the 7 foot or the 10.5. Next is speed tables. So speed tables do everything that speed cushions do. Their only disadvantage is they span the entire road. So it affects, your emergency vehicles the same amount as it does cars. So we don't usually put those on collectors, and we try to stay away from them unless there's a specific reason that, they may be a good idea. Sorry about that. So this is some data that NDOT has collected about the impact of speed cushions. They've studied 6 streets that have the 6x7 speed cushion configuration installed, and they found that there's, on average, 9-mile-an-hour decrease to the average speed, and then 12-mile-an-hour difference to the 85th percentile. So we were glad to see this data come in. It feels good to know that our efforts aren't for nothing here, and that by implementing these measures, we actually are making a difference in the speed that people are going. So should vertical measures not be available for whatever reason, we've got some other tools as well. First and foremost, our radar feedback signs. They pretty much do what they say they're going to do. A person drives by and they tell you how fast you're going. Notably, it doesn't really do much to impede them from going fast. It doesn't report anyone. It doesn't take your license plate. It truly just flashes the speed that driver's going. So there's really nothing to stop somebody from blowing by at 60 miles an hour, and then it just.
Well, let me ask about that. Well, let me ask about that. Since you know that it really doesn't do what you would hope it would do, why don't we just spend money for surveillance cameras or something?
That is, I'll consider that a 2-part question. They don't do nothing. It is shown that they have a reduction in speed about 6 miles an hour rather than that 9. So on average, people do see that they're going fast and they'll think, oh, I'll slow down. So they're not a waste of money in that respect. The second part of your question is why not spend money on surveillance cameras? And I believe it's Tennessee, but definitely in Nashville, it just is not allowed. It's out of NDOT's hands. There would need to be some legislation passed to allow the use of speed cameras in Davidson County. Moving on to another measure, street narrowing or pavement markings. Basically, a lot of streets in Nashville are a little wider than they truly need to be to move traffic. And what has been discovered in the last 20, 30 years is that when drivers have a long field of visibility and a wide margin for error, they'll naturally tend to go faster. And most people don't even mean to do it. So if you were driving on like a really narrow street, I'm sure we've all been on, kind of the more urban streets that have cars parked on both sides and it's really tight. People don't generally speed there just because it's uncomfortable for them. But on streets like the ones we're seeing here, you can imagine it, feeling fairly comfortable to put your foot on the gas a little bit and, maybe creep up to faster than you would really intend to be going. So what we can do is add white edge lines to streets like that. And though it doesn't physically do anything, it actually is shown to reduce speeds slightly just by letting people know that, some road space is for them. And it creates a little bit of a shoulder so that if you want to go out and walk your dog, it's not a sidewalk. It certainly isn't as safe as a sidewalk, but there's at least the comfort of knowing I'm supposed to be over here. Cars know they're supposed to be over there. And there's less risk of impact, thankfully. The next is traffic circles. These are going to be pretty rare. The issue that we find in Nashville specifically is that in order to have a successful installation of these, you need to have a really, really large intersection so that cars have room to actually get all the way around it. I don't think there are any intersections along Ransom Place that would be a good fit for these, but they are an option that we have the ability to consider should, special circumstances warrant them. And then lastly, we have bulb outs and chicanes. So bulb outs are another way to address intersections. Rather than taking space out of the middle, bulb outs take space out of the edges. So narrowing up intersections with bulb outs, and I guess I'll describe them a little bit. Basically, it's just white edge lines offset from the curb and delineators placed along that line to make the intersection feel smaller than it really is. And the reason we do that is because it'll shorten crossing distances as well as lower the speed that cars are able to make turns through the intersection. So if you're forced to slow down a little bit before getting to the intersection, there's a lower likelihood that you'll be, whipping through it so fast you might, not notice somebody crossing the street, or, maybe there's some bushes. You just have more time to react if there is something that you're going to collide with. And then lastly is chicanes. This is another pretty rare one, but it's an effort to take a wide roadway and both make it narrower, but also make it more wavy. So it'd be pretty difficult to really go fast and also drive in a sort of serpentine pattern like this. If anyone's familiar with Fairfax Avenue in Nashville, it's had chicanes for a long time, so they can be successful, but we generally don't start there. So that's everything that traffic calming does do. There are, of course, many, many different arms of NDOT and Nashville as a whole. So we like to finish this section by plugging some of the other resources that are at everyone's disposal to address problems. So Hub Nashville, that's the big one. They do, they're the biggest umbrella here. Anything from flooding issues, obstructions of right-of-way. You could request a stop sign there, report improperly parked vehicles. They've got an app that kind of guides you through the different things that you can let the city know about. Next is Anna Dearman. She is an NDOT staff member, the walking and biking manager specifically for anything the sidewalk, bikeway related. She's a great resource and really friendly person. And then we've got the Beautification Commission. That's J.D. Lane. They're the commission coordinator. They run the Adopt a Street, community service, neighborhood cleanups, kind of all that. Do we have any questions about the toolkit before we move on to the design for Ransom Place?
Yeah, I do about the, I'm sorry, Someone else?
Hey,
Someone else?
this Councilwoman Vercher, can we just make sure, if we're gonna go with the speed cushions, that they span both sides so cars don't go around the speed cushions?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me back up a little bit and just kind of discuss that in a little greater detail because it's a very good point. So we have a variety of configurations to address differing road widths. What we try to do is place 3 on roads that are wide enough, and we don't like to leave more than 3 or 4 feet between the edge of the road and speed cushions. If for some reason there are factors that would make that a worry, what we can do is add these white delineators here in the bottom right corner. We don't do that by default, but if you were on like a bus route, say, and we could only do 2 cushions, that's another tool we have to prevent cars from going around, because we are aware that the most motivated of drivers will do a lot to skirt around these cushions. And then another method that kind of helps address that is, if we're worried about it, we can place these signs that warn of the speed cushions fairly close to the road, and people generally will not intentionally drive over a sign. And any other questions?
Yeah, the cars that we have issues with, for the most part, I think, and I'm talking about the more egregious speeding. They're the fancy
The motivated drivers.
They're the motivated drivers, and I think that may be what Councilwoman Bircher is bringing up. And I'm going to second that, because those are the ones that probably would try to straddle or somehow get around that best they could. Can they? That's a question. I think you probably hit on it. They can probably slip around or straddle or do something to avoid that. They're those basics.
Yeah. So if we place cushions about this far apart, the only generally personal vehicles, so like cars and light trucks, their wheelbase is narrow enough that even if you have one tire in the gap, your other one's going to be hitting the cushion, and then you're off kilter. So that's why we really do like these, is they have a pretty good track record of affecting those people who really wouldn't listen to signs or the speed limit, obviously.
Yeah, we have a drag strip basically, and we lost a real good member of the HOA because of it. He was our treasurer, and they like to drag from the 4-way stop at Mock Orange all the way down where there's a clear path past Centerstone all the way to Murfreesboro Road. And that has been driving us crazy. And they also come from our other neighborhood, coming off Olive Circle, our neighborhood called Ransom Park. They come off of Olive and turn onto Ransom, heading back toward Murfreesboro Road. And they don't stop, they don't slow down, they just fly through. So that's what we're dealing with.
Got it. No, that's great feedback. So you may have noticed I pulled up our concept design for Ransom Place, and maybe we can reiterate some of the feedback you just gave. But what we see, we've got 4 sets of speed cushions. That's the yellow trapezoid to see, and then 4-way stop is noted here. And I don't think that this intersection between like Olive Circle where it intersects Ransom the second time, that's just a 2-way, right?
See. Yeah, and it looks like it disappeared.
Sorry about that.
Okay. You got Elderberry where there's 1, and it looks like that's right before Elderberry, I'm assuming. That's a great place for 1. We have an issue coming out of there flying. And then the next one is Olive Circle on this deeper end, closer to the dead end. And that second one from the east headed west toward Murfreesboro Road. That would catch that. And there's a lot of that comes out of that neighborhood and left, and boom, that would catch it right there. Yeah, and just a nice stretch, but you said you calculated what it takes to slow down between those next two. And then you got our four-way stop, I see. And then arriving at the stop, it looks like hopefully the first one you put down would slow them down at the stop sign. Sure would be nice if they had one more to stop the drag strip. Because as you see, you got the stop sign and then you've only got one headed toward Ransom Place to break up the quarter-mile hot rod run.
Got it. No, that's great feedback to have. So there probably is room for another one if we could sneak it in like really close, maybe behind this set of condos here.
Yes. Yes.
So they wouldn't need to drive over a speed cushion while they're like waiting for the light.
Or maybe in between the two driveways of Aldi.
Yeah. I guess you probably can't see my mouse.
We sort of see it, but not exactly.
Maybe right around that neck of the woods.
But we've got one.
Got it. Great. Well, we're taking notes, and the whole point of this public meeting is we want to present everyone with a high-level design, get this kind of feedback. So when we go and actually produce plans, we take that into account. So we've got that noted down, and we'll look and make sure that it's feasible first, but it looks like there's a pretty good chance we could squeeze another one in there since it is a known problem area.
Now this is unbelievable what I'm about to tell you, but I'm gonna, maybe I should, if this is gonna get posted for public view. We'll just say some public transit comes through here at a rapid pace sometimes as well.
Interesting.
They're carrying public people. They're little, but they do. They will exceed 25 miles per hour.
Okay. So I guess what I'll say is buses in general, they aren't as affected by speed cushions, but they can't not go over it. They'll hit them a little bit. And they ought to, I would expect them to slow down to an appropriate speed as well.
David, in your opinion, do you think we could benefit from the markings?
That's a great question. I will have to check my notes. I went out and did a site visit after this concept was made to check the grades and the pavement width. Generally, we will mark if roadways are much wider than, say, like 24 feet. That'd be like two 12-foot lanes. If it's any wider than that, we like to shrink the lanes down to somewhere around 10 or 11, depending on the type of neighborhood.
And I want to add too, like certain markings changes the aesthetics of the neighborhood. So if you're talking about the markings that's going to divide the lines, just be mindful that it's going to change the look of the neighborhood. It's going to make it look like a major roadway going through your neighborhood versus a neighborhood street.
And thus is why she's the councilwoman. And
so
that
is an excellent point that I'd like to expand upon.
We are trying to keep our HOA beautiful.
Yes. In the traffic calming program, I don't think there's a single case of us ever recommending a double solid yellow line be installed. And the reason is because you're exactly right. It does create a more arterial feel, and that actually encourages speeding. So y'all don't have one today. If you did, the best thing to do, as long as volumes are low enough, I think would be remove it. That's not currently something the traffic calming program does, but it's not applicable here, thankfully. So I guess point being, rest assured that we would not add a double solid yellow line as part of the traffic calming program.
Okay. All right.
Any other thoughts on the concept design? All right.
I don't have any.
Okay, great. So the last few slides, we'll just kind of give a brief overview of the timeline here. So this red circle here, meeting one, that's what we're in now. Previously, we had residents from this neighborhood apply. That's how we got, considered and then ultimately selected. That happens 2 times a year. So if you know anybody else who is looking for traffic calming, by all means, make them aware that NDOT does do an application period every 6 months. And then between the application and selection, NDOT does a lot of data collection, evaluates all of the factors that we talked about previously, and ultimately chooses those 25 streets once every 6 months. So what will happen after today is we will take the feedback that we've gathered, as well as the information collected on the site visit, and refine a final concept design. So it may add cushions, it may reduce them if that's what was wanted. To basically produce a set of plans that can be more carefully scrutinized by the public. That leads straight into meeting 2. So NDOT will advertise it the same way they did this one, with the mailer postcards. And that's where the final concept design is presented. It should be available online a couple days before that meeting. And then we move on to the voting. So the way that traffic calming ballots work today is we send a 3rd round of postcards to each of the property owners along the affected street, in this case, Ransom Drive. They each have a unique ID, and then they can choose to go online or choose not to go online and vote. And the traffic calming project will succeed if 66% of those who do vote in favor of the installation. Then after that, just goes into the queue for ordering materials, and then once materials arrive, the contractor will have it on their to-do list and get the project installed. That is unfortunately at the present time a fairly lengthy lead time, given some issues that we had procuring materials a while back, and that resulted in a backlog that the NDOT contractors are diligently working their way through and just kind of trying to catch up. But that basically sums up the next several steps. Are there any other questions before we wrap up?
What's your guess on that timeline? And not that we would hold you to anything at all, but you're talking 2 months, 6 months? What do you, just from where we are today, just throw a number out.
It usually takes us a few weeks from the time of the meeting to produce the design. Then the meeting is scheduled. We'll have meeting number 2, call it 2 months from now. And then the last 2 steps, so 6-week ballot window from the ballot window. That's another month and a half. And then construction is really the variable one. So that can be up to between 8 and hopefully not this long anymore, but it's been up to 16 weeks and previously. So it'll be a while. We're probably talking like next winter or so.
Okay.
And we have one more question about the voting part. There's not a minimum number of responders. It just has to be 66% of those who do respond, right?
That's correct. So if 3 people respond and 2 of them say yes, it's a go.
Now, here's one last question. We actually electronically vote in our neighborhood. And I know you may have something, I don't know how locked in you guys are with what you're doing, but we actually sent this out for a vote ourselves, not knowing how this actually worked, but we thought, well, we'll send it out. And we estimated there would be approximately 3 speed bumps inside of our stop sign, and then approximately 2 outside toward Murfreesboro Road. And then we asked them to vote on that and approve it. We have a vote for the entire HOA, and then we had broke it down into separated by Ransom Place only. Because apparently that's how this is going to be, Ransom Place only.
Oh yeah, that's very interesting. But you are correct.
Our vote was in the, our vote was in the 95%, I think. Let's see. 95% yes on Ransom Place that responded. But I don't know if you could use that.
No, that's great news. It sounds like you all as a neighborhood are plenty motivated to make this happen. And you know, so far we've not heard a lot of negative feedback. So I'd say it's looking good. And generally, you know, streets that get to this stage have an 80%-ish rate of success. Usually streets don't get selected if there aren't pretty serious problems needing to be addressed.
As far as the next meeting is concerned, you will keep me in the loop as far as emailing that information to me, correct?
We will send the mailers out, so you should get something in your mailbox that announces the next date and time of the meeting, and then.
Okay, I'm not on. We don't. Neither one of us live on Ransom Place. We live in the cul-de-sac.
Oh, interesting. That being the case, you probably would not get mail, but what we can do is make a note that you'd like to attend the meeting and get you on that list.
Yes, okay. So my name is already there on the list for, well, I'm the one that has been emailing back and forth. And so what do I need to get my email to you or what?
Yeah, that would actually be wonderful, just so nobody loses track of it. This is my contact information. So again, my name is David Greaves. David Greaves at KinleyHorn.com is how I can be reached. Gil Thomas, he's the NDOT program manager for the traffic calming program. He's also an excellent resource, you know, should anyone have questions. Okay, now I spoke with Mr. Gill, but I need to send my email to you as well. Okay, I'll do that. If you copy both of us, that would probably be the most effective. Okay. All right, will do. Great. Well, everyone, thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate it when neighbors show up to these and give us the kind of feedback that you've given us. It helps a lot with our design and making sure that we're going to propose something that everyone will be happy with. We like to finish with a plug for NDOT's social media presence. That can be found here. And then this QR code will take you to TrafficCalming.Nashville.gov. That is a website that has been pretty majorly fleshed out in the last year or so. So it's got a lot of really helpful information about the program if anyone is curious to learn more. And I think we should be able to find this video on there as well in the next couple days. Okay. Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
No, thank you, David. I don't have any more questions.
Yeah, I thank you too. Yeah, I appreciate what you're doing.
We appreciate it.
Thank you very much. We appreciate you as well. Anytime.
All right, everybody have a good rest of the day. Thank you.
All right.